Good morning, or good day, or good evening, everyone. My name is Ermias Kabrab, Director of World Food Center, Associate Dean of Global Engagement, and Professor of Animal Science at the University of California, Davis. Today, we are presenting an independent dialogue as a precursor to the United Nations Food Systems Summit in September of this year. And today's dialogue targets track 3, which focus on boosting nature positive production. Today's dialogue is titled Use of Feed Formulation to Improve Animal Production. Thank you to our facilitator, panelists, and other invited experts for being with us, and thanks also to those of you watching the recording of this dialogue. The format of today's event is as follows. The facilitator will give an overview of the topic, then introduce the panelists. Each panelist will give a brief presentation, and after the presentations, there will be a moderated dialogue amongst all participants and panelists. We are looking for expert dialogue around 6 major areas. One is to provide sectoral context for the particular innovation under examination, why these innovations are important, what other themes, innovations in this action track are also important. We want to encourage discussion of potential gaps in science and evidence-based that warrant continuing research, and encourage discussion of the potential for these innovations to deliver food system solutions, whether they might be considered game changers, and try to identify potential areas of divergence or debate among the experts and participants, to memorialize common perspective themes and foster expert consensus on next steps and new directions as well. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items to cover. Invited guests' microphones are muted for now. We will unmute you after the presentations end. And please turn off your video for the first part of the event. Please also hold your questions until the discussion period. And during that period, please use the raise hand feature in your toolbar to be addressed. And if you have any issues, please send a chat to the host and you'll get a targeted help. The video recording will be available in a few weeks on the World Food Center website. Now I'd like to introduce the facilitator of today's dialogue, Dr. Bola Adesogan. Dr. Adesogan received his bachelor's in 1988 in agriculture at the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, and his master's and PhD in animal nutrition at the University of Reading, United Kingdom. He is a professor of animal nutrition and director and principal investigator of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for livestock systems. He has authored or co-authored over 100 scientific publications, received over $65 million in research grants, given over 100 international or national seminars in over 25 countries, with at least half-been invited presentations. He has mentored over 50 visiting scientists and interns from over 20 countries, and he currently chairs the Council of Feed the Future Innovation Lab Directors. He has received various awards, including the 2019 Beaufort International Agriculture Award from the American Society of Animal Science. Thank you for agreeing to facilitate the discussion today, and I'll pass it on to your capable hands. Sagan.
Thank you very much, Ermias. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a real pleasure and an honor for me to moderate this session. I think we're dealing with one of the most important topics as far as livestock production and even addressing malnutrition across the world. Feeds have been described as the #1 priority for improving livestock production across the 8 focal countries of the Livestock Systems Innovation Lab. So in the lab, we work in 8 countries, 6 in Africa and 2 in Asia. And when we started our work in 2015, we went into each of these countries and asked them for a list of the main constraints to livestock production. And unanimously, individuals and groups of people said feed is the #1 constraint. So we're dealing with a very important issue here. And feed accounts for between 60 to 90% of the costs of livestock production. And so in my travels over the last month to Burkina Faso and in Ethiopia, I've met with the ministers who described dire situations with major deficits in feed availability, quality feed availability for livestock production. Well, what are the consequences? When feed costs are high, then the production costs for livestock are high, and the cost of animal products are high. And in fact, the state minister in Ethiopia was saying, when you have this situation, when you have high animal product and livestock costs, which make them unaffordable for the poor, you cannot remedy the situation by an animal health intervention. You cannot remedy the situation by genetics intervention. You have to focus on feed, which is the main cost factor in the production of livestock. So today we are focusing on feed, and we're focusing on an aspect of feed that I think is so important and so appreciated and exploited in many parts of the developing world. And that's the ration we feed to animals and making sure it's balanced to reduce and prevent wastage, to reduce and prevent emissions, to increase the performance of livestock, to enable any genetic improvements to be gained, to enable health interventions to be sustained. So the challenge that we have is across Africa, for instance, I would guess that 80 to 90% of livestock are not fed diets that are formulated to be balanced. And those that are using equations or models that are derived from the West. Consequently, they typically overpredict nutrient requirements. So I'm really excited at this session we have here today as dealing with this important topic, because by formulating better rations for livestock, we can feed them better, we can optimize their performance, we can improve, we can benefit the environment, we can increase profitability of farmers, and we can make livestock products more affordable for the poor, thereby reducing problems of stunting and malnutrition. So today, our sessions are going to focus on some countries, Vietnam, where Dr. Kebriab has had some great successes in rolling out a ration formulation software, and then in 2 countries of the Livestock Systems Innovation Lab, which are Burkina Faso and in Ethiopia. And with many of those who will be speaking today, we have been conducting research for development to improve feeds and feeding of livestock, and we've got some really interesting and impressive results. So I'm really pleased at the lineup of speakers that we have for our session today. First of all, we have Dr. Hai Po Pham. One second, please. He works at the Division of Science and Technology in the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development in Ho Chi Minh City. He has been active for many years in the field of dairy cattle nutrition, especially improving nutrition to increase milk yield and reduce methane emissions. He finished his PhD program in nutrition and animal feed at the Vietnam Academy of Agricultural Sciences. We will also be listening to my colleague Padma Kumar from ILRI, India. And Padma is an animal production scientist who is specialized in feeds, forages, feed technologies. And he is the ILRI country representative for Nepal at the moment. He is also the country coordinator for the Livestock Systems Innovation Lab in Nepal, who oversees all our projects. He is also managing ILRI's near-infrared reflectance spectroscopy-based feed technology research platform in India. We will also hear from Aimable Uwizeye, who is a livestock policy officer at the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO. He is interested in global change towards sustainable agricultural food systems, focusing on nitrogen flows and greenhouse gas emissions from livestock systems. He leads a program aiming to improve the sustainability of livestock systems through evidence-based policy, incentives, and investment. He holds a doctorate in veterinary medicine, a double master's degree in sustainable development in agriculture, and a PhD in global animal production systems. Dr. Ermias Kebriab, who is our host, and he will also be speaking to us. He's also the convener of this meeting. He's the Associate Dean of Global Engagement and Director of the World Food Center at University of California, Davis. He holds the session on Endowed Chair in Sustainable Agriculture. He conducts research in nutrition modeling and the impact of livestock on the environment. And he's contributing author to the 2019 IPCC update. He also chairs the Methane Committee of UNFAO. He has published over 250 peer-reviewed articles and given over 100 invited presentations globally, received numerous awards, including Excellence in Ruminant Nutrition and International Agriculture from the American Society of Animal Science, as well as the Young Animal Scientist Award from the Canadian Society of Animal Science. His bachelor's degree was from the University of Asmara in Eritrea, and like me, his master's and PhD degrees were from the University of Reading in the United Kingdom. So this is the lineup we have today, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cabrera to give the first presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bola. Thank you for the introduction. So it's my pleasure now to talk about ration formulation software to enhance productivity. And we are using the case of Vietnam here. As Bola said earlier, there's a number of software that's been built to fit the different production systems around the world. This is the one that we started quite a long time ago. We worked with the USDA FAS and over the last 5-6 years to develop this and to get it into to field use in Vietnam, which I'm looking forward to hear from Dr. Hai after this presentation. So we are expecting that there's going to be 2/3 more protein to be consumed by the year 2050, and according to FAO projections, the demand for meat is going to increase by 73% and the demand for dairy by 59%. So what this means is that then the livestock production need to double by the year 2050, and therefore next phase. So there is actually very little room to expand the arable land, because now we already have most of the arable land under production. We can't really expand anything more. So what we need to do is we need to be able to sustainably intensify the food production in order to meet the demand. Next please. All right, so the agricultural sector is at the nexus of efforts to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, adapt to climate change, and assure food security for growing populations. And many agricultural practices that reduce greenhouse gas emissions have the added benefit of contributing to agricultural sustainability and effective natural resource management. Through the ECLS, which is the Enhanced Capacity of Low Emission Development Strategy project, the US government provided opportunities for technical assistance in support of countries' efforts to maximize their agricultural sectors, while at the same time minimizing greenhouse gas emissions as well. Next, please. So the projects, the government of Vietnam has estimated agriculture to represent more than 40% of the national greenhouse gas emissions, with rice cultivation and livestock as the two main sources. And the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development in Vietnam issued a policy basically saying that the greenhouse gas emission reduction in agriculture and rural development sector need to be reduced by 2020. So the goal is basically to reduce agricultural greenhouse gas emissions 20% by 2020. So how are we able to achieve this? How are we helping countries such as Vietnam to try to reduce their emissions as well as improve productivity? So a lot of livestock in low-income countries, they are mostly kept at maintenance, and when you are keeping at maintenance, they have relatively higher greenhouse gas emissions compared to those that are being fed well beyond the maintenance. In most of the countries nowadays, high genetic potential animals are recommended because they do have the potential to produce more milk or grow faster, have more beef. But nutrition is important. If you have a high genetic merit animal, but there's no nutrition to go with it, then their potentials are not going to be met. So you will always, in fact, you will lose because those animals may not be as adapted to the environment as the indigenous cattle would be. And also, they would underperform the indigenous adapted breeds. So sometimes we have to make sure that mineral deficiencies do not occur. And another very important information, as Bola already said in this earlier in this talk, was the feed resources, the information about the feed resources. So it's not just the amount, but also the quality of the feed resources is something that we need as well. So what we try to do in Vietnam is we targeted sort of the livestock industry and at the same time with the rice production system as well. So it was integrated livestock production as well as rice production system. And we looked at the profile, the mineral and nutritional status of the available feeds. And then we went into implementation of improved feeding system, such as treated crop residues, which are treated by urea and things like that. And then we decided to develop a ration formulation software, and that need to be in the local language. So in case of Vietnam, the software was developed in Vietnamese, and then recommends some technological options for scaling up the interventions. So the ration formulation software that was put together with the help of our Vietnamese counterparts, particularly the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, and Dr. Hai here also, he really helped us in terms of translating the software, making sure that what you see here is understandable by people who are going to be using this in the long run. So just to give you a little bit taste of the software and how it works, sort of some of the input to the ration formulation software would include a little bit information about the animal itself. Is it what kind of animal it is, how old it is? So we have for beef cattle, we have for dairy cattle, and we have for heifers as well. And so that information is given here. If it is a beef cattle here, for example, you want to know what's the initial body weights of approximately, and then how much gain you want to have on a daily basis. So that will help the software to give you a recommendation of how much and what type of feed can be given to achieve that goal. And then we put together a specific feed library which is targeted to that region, because if you have a software that has feed library from a different region, it's really not going to be that useful to you, because you need to have the feed that's available to the farmer to be able to so that the farmers can say, okay, no, I have X, Y, and Z, and then you go into the software, you choose exactly what they have, and then you're able to do that. So one of the issues that has been before was that there was a lack of information of the local type of breeds of cattle. So having this information in terms of the actual feed and the quality of the feed really helps in putting together the right amounts and quality of feed that needs to be given to the animals to meet the goal that you set earlier. And then the output from the formulation software is then it gives you basically what was sort of the starting weight and the ending weight, and then what was the sort of the average weight, and how long has it been on there. So this is for beef cattle. You will get the same thing for dairy cattle as well, and gives you the cost as well. So what's the cost of achieving a certain performance? And this is really critical, because if farmers, let's say, wanted to see, like, if they want to import feed, if there's no feed available, but they want to import, and see how much they gain and how much money they can make, then so this kind of analysis is really critical for decision making for farmers to say, okay, I don't have other feed like alfalfa or something available to me, but if I purchase some feed, then I can see that I can make this much money. So if it is worthwhile, then you can import those kind of feeds as well. And it also gives you some estimates of greenhouse gas emissions from the farm as well. And then after the software was completed, then there was a training session. A number of training sessions has happened. This one was back in 2014, but the last one was in 2019, I believe. And basically had different sessions, different parts of the country. We had training sessions in Hanoi, in Hue, and in Ho Chi Minh City also. And usually, so we have those sessions every year or every 2 years, and we have about 60 to 100 livestock extension specialists coming in and basically have hands-on kind of training, so that they know exactly what they're doing. And we also take them to a farm and get information from the farm and put it into the software and give advice to the farmer right away. So basically, they ask the farmer, what kind of feed do you have available to you? And what do you want to do in terms, if it is beef, then the average daily gain that they wanted to achieve, and then they put it in the software and basically give advice to the farmer. Hey, if you do this and this and that, then this is the likely outcome is going to be. So we found that was been very, very helpful. At the same time, we also had some demonstration where a group of extension agents were sent to Thailand to learn about improving the nutritional content of feed, particularly rice straw. Yeah. So after this, then what do we need to do? So we were thinking of to have further opportunities. We could extend the software to other livestock. At the moment, it's only cattle. So, and then we could look at case studies. And then another very important thing that was mentioned earlier was to also determine nutrient requirement for those indigenous cattle as well. So a lot of the work that has been done before was based on Western breeds, but we needed to really make really appropriate to the local breeds, and then trying to scale up to other countries as well when we have opportunity to use similar kind of work and scale up to other countries. Next, please. And so in terms of that, so what we are doing right now with the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Livestock is we are targeting a tropical breed. So we've done sort of a general analysis of all the tropical breeds, but then in Ethiopia and Burkina Faso, we are very much targeting and measuring their requirements. So the machine you see here was implemented in Ethiopia. We have similar one in Burkina Faso, in which we just finished a trial actually. And basically what this helps us is to determine what is the nutrient requirements of looking at the oxygen consumption, carbon dioxide emissions, methane emissions. Together we can come up with a calculation of what is the nutrient requirement for those type of breeds. Therefore, we can provide a much more accurate estimate of how much they need as well. So this has been done almost at the end for Ethiopia. As you can see, this is the software for Ethiopia, and we have similar software for sheep and goats for Burkina Faso. Next, please. Okay, so this is the last slide, just acknowledging a lot of hard work that one put in. Particularly Abbas Ahmadi, who you see in the picture here, the training. He developed the software. He's the software engineer who work on these projects, and a number of people who participated in this. Of course, the USDA Foreign Agricultural Service, who's been a partner on this for the last 6 years or so, and the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, that also helped us in putting together, having access to farmers, letting us talk to farmers, get information from farmers, and also for putting together the training sessions in different cities of Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ermias, for that enlightening presentation. We appreciate it. We will have time at the end of all the presentations to discuss different questions. Please, you can post your questions in the chat, or when we have the question session, you can share them at that point. So now I'm going to invite Dr. Pham to speak about his experience of using and training the ration formulation software. Dr. Pham, please.
The experience of using and training the ration formula software. Really, USDA support for Vietnamese two software. One software for beef, it called it the Taurus, and the second software for dairy, we called it BC Dairy. I would like to present the experience to transfer the BC Dairy software in Vietnam. Next, please. Before I talk about how to transfer the software, I would like to introduce the dairy ration in Vietnam. Vietnam, there are 6 ecological in Vietnam, you see on the slide, Vietnam, there are 6 ecological regions stretched out on Vietnam with the number dairy. You can see almost the dairy cattle raised on the Vietnam, but concentrated in the northern south region, especially in Ho Chi Minh City, with the total herd is about 70,000 head. So almost the transfer for technique is concentrated in Ho Chi Minh City. Nextly, the total herd, the total dairy herd is about 317,729 heads, with the total breast milk is about 986.122 tons per year, with average milk yield is about 12.9 kg head per day. It's not so high, especially that almost the total herd is raised in the about 20,000 and 3,140 farm, especially 70% farm raise the cow under 10 dairy cow. Especially we almost the cost of the rice for milk concentrated for feed. The next list. However, Vietnam, there are some the biggest milk company. For example, Vinamilk, with the total herd is about 27 and 100 dairy cow in 11 dairy farm in whole Vietnam. The second, TH Milk, is 45,000 dairy cow at Nghe An province in the north, and Mok Châu Milk is about 30,000 dairy cow in the north, and Đà Lạt Milk is about 5,000 dairy cow in the middle of Vietnam. Next, please. As you know, and at now global warming caused by greenhouse gas emission in the world is increasingly severe. Increase the livestock sector contribute significant in this emission. Therefore, with the support by USDA and the UC Davis link with the NAS, National Agriculture Extension Center of Vietnam, organized the workshop on March 2013, workshop on developing extension strategy for greenhouse gas mitigation in the livestock sector in Vietnam, with the total 120 people at Hanoi, Huế, and in Vietnam. After finish the workshop, based on the idea of the participant and the suggest of the National Agriculture Extension Center, need to the software to calculate, to estimate the ration to meet the requirement, the requirement for dairy and least cost, and reduce the methane emission. So next please. So next please. So BC UC David, based on the BC Dairy, to edit, to translate into Vietnamese for easier to the technical and on the farm can use. We call this the BC Dairy to 2016. Based on that, we organize the training software for 100 technicians and students, also on the farm in October 2016 at Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. However, almost however, because the combine the material in the software are not suitable, the use and the implementation is quite difficult. So in Nestle, in 2019, UC David edit and support the database for BC Dairy again, and we call it a BC Dairy 2019. The training organized in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City for 100 people, including technician, on the farm, and officer. BC Dairy 2019, there are so much change, especially the adding the more 1,000 fish, the kind of fish in Vietnam, or in 6 ecologization region of Vietnam. So the farmer and the technician can get the kind of fish to estimate for the ration. Next, please. However, after that, when finished the training, the government and the researcher and the official in Vietnam how to expand the software for everybody by 3 ways. The first, providing software guidance on the official website. For example, the website of DLD, that means Department of Livestock Production. The second, the National Agriculture Extension Center, NAS, and some the province is, for example, that of Ho Chi Minh City, that of Lâm Đồng. Besides, some the institute or research can get the website, can get the link of the website for them. For example, IES, the Vietnam, that means intensive agriculture in southern for southern of Vietnam, and some the university, for example, Nông Lâm University, Cần Thơ University, to teach for the farmer, for the student, and some the company, for example, Dairy Vietnam company to get the software on the website. You can see one on the link. Next, please. Beside the NAS organize the workshop for the Honda Dairy Farm and the Vietnam National University of Agriculture, teaching for the student with more nearly 6,000 students to study this software. Next, please. To research, through experiment to carry out the software organized in the Cần Thơ University and Nông Lâm University, and there are two papers published. You can see on the slide and the website. Next, please. Besides, in myself to go to some the roving in the south, the training for the technician and the farmer, for example, in Lâm Đồng roving and Đồng Nai roving, I adding between the theory and practice on the farmer. I introduce for the farmer how to get the information from the software to calculate suitable for their farm. You can see here in the picture I teach for the Lâm Đồng roving and Đồng Nai roving. Next, please. Based on the progress in I present, I think I would like to recommendation for the software to Vietnam. The first, build a nation nutrition system for dairy consists of two components. The first, nutritional needs of cattle. The second, chemical composition and nutritional value of feed. The second, to Vietnam, evaluate the use of software in production practice for better use experience. To the UC David, perfecting the software to suit the tropical condition and cold of Vietnam. That's all. Here is my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pham, for your enlightening presentation. It's great to hear about how you have rolled out this software across Vietnam. We'll move on to our next speaker, and Dr. V. Padma is going to speak about the use of ration formulation software in India. Padma, please go ahead.
Okay, dear colleagues and friends, I would like to discuss with you about a digital advisory tool which ILRI has developed to formulate least cost dairy ration in the mixed farming context. This was developed particularly for India, but now we are going to use this tool in Rwanda very shortly as part of the Rwanda Dairy Development Project. Now, yeah, as we know, in the low and middle income countries, there is a huge gap between production potential of dairy animals and actual milk yield, there is a huge yield gap existing. For example, in India, it's roughly around 1 ton per cow per year is the average yield, whereas in China it's around 5 tons. So that means there is a huge gap that is existing. Now, there are many reasons. If you analyze the reasons, there are many leading to the yield gap. Now, out of these, one of the most important one is the mismatch of nutrient requirement and nutrient supply, which means farmers generally in the mixed farming situation make use of the agriculture byproduct or the crop residue as the basal diet of the animal, and then supplement with whatever byproducts are available, depending on the local availability. That is the usual practice. They generally don't look at how much nutrients are required to produce a particular level of milk, and based on that feeding. That practice is not at all existing. Next, please. Now, in this context, where most of the farmers just feed their animals with whatever process, this particular tool will help the extension workers as well as farmers to balance the requirement with the availability based on the locally available feed resources. So that is the advantage of this particular tool. And depending upon what type of smartphone one has, they can download this application, mobile app, either from the Google Play Store, if it is Android phone, or from App Store, if it is iPhone. And they can download the on-farm feed advisor from the site. Now, when you after downloading, this is the login page which comes first. As you can see, there are two options. One is start with the general database. This is for general public. Anybody wants to use this app, they can straight away click start the first button, that is start with the general database. And for project people, ILRI generally allot certain code with which they can enter the software and then start using it. And we will take the example of the general database because this can be used in any country, even though it was developed in the mixed farming system. So when you click the start with the general database, next one, please. So it will immediately ask, do you want to edit the feed database? That means by default, there is a feed database already existing. And if you are visiting for the second time or third time, you can skip. But the first time, if you're coming, then you click yes. I want to edit the feed database. Then it will go to the feed database. Next, please. See, this is the feed database where you can see the different feeds available. Of course, one has to scroll down to see the other feeds, and the nutritional information and also the price of the feed is available. So this can be edited. The price can be edited, the nutritional information can be edited. You can block a particular feed if that feed is not available in a particular season. Then you can add a new feed if a new feed is available in that locality. And if you think that, okay, this feed database doesn't work for me, I need a fresh database because the type of feeds available are different, then what you can do is delete all feeds and start adding feed one by one by giving this information. Once that information is given, then you can update and exit. Next, please. Now, when you exit, then you will come to a page where you can add the animal information. There is a button below, down below, you can see add animal, where you can add the animal. Next one, please. See, this is the format which appears when you click add the animal, where you can fill the information such as the quantity of milk, quality of milk, what is the average weight of the animal. If you don't know the weight, you can take the girth measurement and put that one. And also if the stage of pregnancy, etc., can be put. This is the animal details. Then if you say submit, the next page will open. Next, please. Yeah. See, this is the page where you have to add a feed. That means you have to ask the farmer and start selecting the feeds from the drop-down menu, because this feed database is developed for that particular village or particular block. So you will find out all the feeds available in that particular village. So ask the farmer which are the feeds you are feeding the animal. Yesterday, which feeds you gave it to the animal. Then you select, and then you can put the quantity. Next, please. So for example, if you have selected 3 feeds based on what farmer said, and also roughly the quantity. And there are 2 categories you can see: owned and purchased. Owned means, say for example, rice straw, a crop, because most of our, in the mixed farming system, most of the farmers are not crop farmers or livestock farmers, they are crop livestock farmers. Most of them will have agriculture. So that crop byproduct which is available on farm, it is owned feed. And if something is purchased from the market, it is purchased feed. This is just to know what is out-of-pocket expense. So this information you have entered. Then your job is done. The rest of the things the tool will do. Next, please. Yeah. So when you say, after entering the feed, when you say the gap calculation, then the app will show what is the gap in terms of energy, protein, and even in the case of dry matter, between what is required, considering the production of the animal and the maintenance requirement of the animal, and what is available. Available means what farmer is feeding. So you will find the gap. Pink color shows that there is a shortage. Green color shows that there is a surplus. So in some case, say for example, here there is a 83 I think it is 13 megajoules of energy in short. Yes, 19 megajoules of energy is in short, whereas 715 grams of protein is surplus. So this is the situation, present situation. Now you have to click, after looking at this, click balance the feed at the bottom. Click balance the feed. When you say balance the feed, the system will automatically choose the feeds from the locality which is available with the farmer as well as available in the locality in such a way that it becomes a low-cost diet. So with a little bit adjustment, the feed is now balanced. You see at the bottom, you can see the gap before balancing and after balancing. Before balancing, the energy shortage was 19 megajoules. Now it is 0. That means the availability and requirement is matched. Similarly, protein, it was 715 surplus. Now it is 0, which means it is balanced. So it will give this information. The feed advice, which is at the top of the screen, that can be given to the farmer. The farmer can either take a photograph using the phone, or this information can be sent to the farmer through WhatsApp or electronic media, by email, or in whatever way it is possible. See, the app will also give additional information, like for example, feed cost. What was the feed cost before balancing? When farmer was using his feeds, and what is the feed cost now? You see, there is a difference of around 12 rupees. 60 rupees was before. Now it is 51. That means there is a difference of 10. It got reduced. Similarly, the bottom part you can see what is the additional income, because the animal will produce slightly more milk because we have challenged the animal with more feed. So this is the additional income in terms of milk. And also, what is the percentage of feed cost to milk income? This is a very good indicator, because usually the feed cost is around 60%, and our aim is to bring it down to below 40%. See, in this case, it is 40.69%, which is a very good indicator as well as the feed specialists are concerned. Yeah, it will also give some more information, like for example, dry matter percentage of the diet based on the advised feeds. It is around 42% here. Ideally, it should be less than 70%. Similarly, the NDF percentage should be 25 to 50. That is the ideal for better intake. Here it is 48%, and the CP density should be more than 6%. It is almost double here. So that will also give that kind of indication. And finally, and the most important one is the methane emission before balancing and after balancing. Will also be shown by the application. This is based on a mathematical model we have used. And here, see, the difference is only 2 liters per kg. This is liters per kg dry matter intake. Per kg dry matter intake. So 2 liter difference reduced per kg dry matter intake. Or if the average dry matter intake is 10 kg, then it becomes 20 liters reduction per animal per day. If you multiply with the 365 per year, you can calculate. And if there are 1 million animals where we apply this tool, then you can calculate the quantity of methane that can be reduced. I'm not saying that always it will be reduced. Sometimes it will be increased also. I'll explain that later. Now, at the bottom, you can see advice memo. If you click advice memo, then a PDF will be generated, which can be shared through WhatsApp or internet, email, or even in our place, people have developed the format in local language, and the information is filled in and supplied, given to the farmer, so that it can be passed on. And next time when you come, when you visit the same farmer, his production level probably it will be less or more, or he might have added 1 more animal. Then you can go back to the same record and modify and give a new fresh advice. So this, yeah, next please. I think that's it from my side. This is a very user-friendly, mobile-based application which anybody can use. Of course, the farmers will require a little bit of training, but the extension officers can train the farmers. It is not not rocket science, very simple operation. Only 2 entry you have to make: animal details and the feed details. And it is another beauty is you can this is the customer can fill the data. It is self-populate. They can self-populate the data depending on their situation, create their own feed database, and they can use it. And this tool is most appropriate in the mixed farming situation, particularly in the Indian context, and because it was developed in the Indian context, and this is for dairy animals, meant for dairy animals. So with this, let me end my presentation. I'll be happy to contribute during discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Padma. Very interesting presentation about the ILRI tool for formulating balanced rations. Our last talk is from Dr. Wizeye, who will be speaking about nitrogen and how balanced nutrition in ruminant systems is key to reducing nutrient loading in the environment. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair, for the introduction. Can you see my screen? Can you confirm? Thank you so much. My presentation today will focus mainly on nitrogen assessment and what are the options to use feed balance to reduce pollution. My presentation will be mainly focusing on the global issue on nitrogen pollution, and we'll give one example on how to use feed balance in Ethiopian case. 1 second. Okay. Okay, now it's good. So as an outline of this presentation, I will start by explaining a little bit the structure change that happened in livestock systems. And then I will present what are the nitrogen issues across the global livestock systems, provide some results on the current level and trend of nitrogen emission from the livestock sector, and provide some example on feed balance, on how to use feed balance to enhance the nitrogen use efficiency, touch a little bit based on policy issues, and I will conclude there. To start, let's say that the supply of animal source food has increased rapidly in the last 15 years, mainly driven by the growth of human population, the urbanization, the rising in income and a change in diets. As Professor Ermias shown before, the estimate from FAO and OECD suggests that meat production will increase in the future, mainly with, let's say, a slow growth in high-income countries, around 26% by the next decade, and a high growth mainly in low-income countries at 74%. Why this change are driven by the demands for meat-purpose animal products, they have also affected the location of animal farm. So we know that due to the rising demand at the global level, the production of animal products has shifted, leading mainly to the concentration of livestock farms in area where feed is not available. Mainly, those large farms currently do rely on import of feed from international markets. The main facilitator of those drivers, of course, we know that how policy has changed at global level with the market liberalization, and also that mostly the externalities, mainly the pollution issues, the emission of greenhouse gas emissions, were not considered mainly during the expansion of the livestock sector. Currently, we can also cite some disruptors in livestock sector with, for example, the ongoing outbreak of African swine fever in Asia, I think also in Vietnam. We have the issue, the international trade issues that are affecting the main exporting countries like the US and China, and of course the current pandemic of COVID-19. However, we know that, of course, the livestock sector is not really mainly about animal production only. So it's quite complex on the supply chain, or the production chain, mainly from the production of inputs that are required to produce feed until to the consumption of the animal products. We found out that, of course, considering the issue or the performance of the animals only was not sufficient. Therefore, looking at the nitrogen issues along the production chain is quite very complete, and provide also the different area of improvement, as I will demonstrate later on. And we see that, of course, the emission of different nitrogen compounds contribute to different issues. Of course, we see N2O or nitrous oxide, which contribute mainly to climate change, ammonia and the NOx that are the main driver of air pollution and acidification, and the nitrates that end up in the water. So those compounds, they do originate mainly from the animals, especially from the manure, but also from the production of feed. So those are the main source. So globally, we found out that the livestock sector contributes to around 55 teragram of nitrogen per year, which is equivalent to approximately 1/3 of human-induced nitrogen emissions. And those emissions, as you can see on the graph on the right side, they originate really from each stage of the production system. And for today, we are mainly interested in animal production, on how to reduce the nitrogen pollution at the stage of animal production. However, before going much more in details on the feed balance, let me discuss a little bit the key results on the regional differences. So we see that mainly the nitrogen emission are mainly taking place from cattle production, especially in mixed dairy and beef cattle systems that are located in South Asia, East and Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Besides, if you look at the efficiency, So this indicator here of life cycle nitrogen use efficiency is really taking into account of the efficiency of nitrogen use across all the stage of the supply chain. It's not only on animal level. So therefore, we found a large variability. So here I'm only presenting the results for cattle. So we see that there is a large variability across all production systems. Mainly, the efficiency goes between 3% to around 65%. However, this variability is found across all countries and production systems. And we see that dairy production systems tend to perform better as compared to beef production. This is mainly related, of course, to the bulk of milk production that you find mainly dairy systems, with only beef producing only meat, but also that most of the animals, especially in low-income countries or in Africa, if I precise, they live longer. So before they get slaughtered, so they may live longer until to more than 8 years of life, of course, in which during that time they may produce more manure that, if not managed, may end up into the environment. Next, I can say that here I want just to show how this variability is quite interesting. And when we look at how feed balance or the adoption of technology in feed balance, especially when you look at how, here I'm comparing the US and Ethiopia, and when you see in US where the feed is really, has been, the feeding systems generally, they have been improved through technology, the use of synthetic amino acids, the balancing of the diet, mainly for the reduction of protein content of the diet, which allowed to achieve a high animal productivity. And less mainly ammonia and pollution at animal level. However, you see that the efficiency of the US, which is green, shown in green here on this graph, is still also very low. Why? Is because when you consider the production, for example, on how feed is produced or how manure is managed in different US farms, we see that that's the lack of best practices in manure management dilutes the efficient gain in animal production. So only feeding, balancing the diets, improving the feeding is not sufficient. So when you look at the entire supply chain, of course, you need to make sure that the effort of reducing the emission or controlling or sustainably managing nitrogen is those efforts are implemented across all stages of the supply chain. In Ethiopia, on the other hand, where the cattle production is still need further improvement on different angles, on animal productivity, especially looking at the genetics and so on, but also the feeding, where the feed quality is still very low. We see that, of course, that is very well reflected in the life cycle nitrogen use efficiency of Ethiopia, which tend to be very low, especially when you look at, for example, the systems that rely on grazing systems. Of course, the low quality marginal land grazing systems in Ethiopia, they tend to have a very low efficiency in our estimates. This is quite the same for when we look at the balance. The balance here, we are estimating how much nitrogen is lost across the entire supply chain per unit of land required to produce feed. In general, for beef, we see that the impact is quite less pronounced as compared to other concentrated animals like for pig systems, and mostly for all systems, the life cycle nitrogen net balance is less than 50 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. Then we wanted to see what to do, for instance, in terms of mitigation, how to use feed balancing approach to improve the efficiency. Here for Ethiopia, we wanted to see, for example, if we target some systems like mixed systems in Ethiopia, and we want to increase, for example, the availability of high quality proteins, especially using a legume tree like coriander, what would be the impact? Of course, as the diet, the baseline diet is a very high fiber content, let's say, so with high content of fiber, especially that baseline diet contain mainly crop residues and other fibrous materials. We wanted to reduce a little bit the gross energy in the diet while we increase the protein content of the diet. So overall, we found out that the efficiency of the system increased, but I would say that didn't increase on the level that was expected, because we found only an increase of 3%. And this is mainly related to the fact that the coriander is not widely available in Ethiopia. That's the first factor. The second is an adoption rate. When you look at how systems are organized, how some farmers may tend to adopt or not adopt the crop. So we only assume that only 50% of farmers will be able to adopt, for example, this supplementation of legumes in their farm. So that's why we achieved only a 3% in terms of the improvement on the efficiency. So then this is bring us to one aspect that I want to touch base here is the policy. So generally, we know that for livestock sector, most of the policy focused on food safety and economic efficiency, less on equity and the environmental pollution. Of course, the main shift will be how to improve the environmental performance of the systems, improve the productivity of the animals, but also ensuring the equity. Equity mainly looking at how the different farmers do access the market, access the inputs and the required technology, because it's difficult to only improve the diets while farmers cannot access to the proper instruments that can help them to achieve the efficiency required, especially the right genetics, but also access research and innovation, but also, and also accessing the high quality feed, which is a big challenge, especially for the most of the production that are using large land, especially marginal land, where feed quality is very, very low. So here we see that, of course, for some systems that are located in the peri-urban areas, especially the mixed systems, it's possible to improve the efficiency by using some software, for example, like the one that has been demonstrated, but also looking at how to introduce the synthetic amino acid that all other legumes. For instance, I would say that in some other production, for example, the poultry production in Ethiopia, they are already a new feed industry that are providing high quality feed in Ethiopia, but that is not done for ruminants. So there are less investment in the production of feed for ruminants. The other issue is, of course, if we want to reduce the pollution issue, we cannot only look at the animals. We only need to look at the management of the problem across the entire chain, especially looking at better manure management and also the use of low emission manure spreading techniques. To conclude, I would say that livestock sector is very important when it comes to the nitrogen pollution. It contributes to around 1/3 of the global nitrogen emissions. We found out that, of course, the nitrogen emission from ruminants are also important because they represent almost 71% of the emission from livestock sector. And we believe that using better feed balance techniques can help farmers to enhance the efficiency and enhance productivity. However, these measures need to be associated with other approach to ensure a sustainable nitrogen management along the production chain. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Uzeye, for that very interesting presentation about your work on reducing nitrogen emissions, the significance of the emissions from the livestock sector and strategies that you've been looking at to mitigate. We have a number of expert panelists as well who did not speak, and these include Professor Agunya Tolera from Hawassa University in Ethiopia. We have Dr. Nuhun Zampaligre from INERA in Burkina Faso. We have Dr. Nyanda Isidore from the same institution, INERA. We have Augustine Anyotunde, who used to be with ILRI. We have Ajebu Nurfeta. I'm sorry, I don't know your institution. Maybe you can mention it to us. We have my colleague Diwaka Vias from University of Florida. So now we're going to have an open discussion session. We want to appreciate each of the speakers for very enlightening and stimulating presentations. So I have a list of questions, but I'm going to throw it open and see if someone would like to ask a question. If you want to, please either go ahead and speak or indicate with your hand or enter your question in the chat. Thank you. Maybe while you are thinking about your questions, let me ask Dr. Ermias about the software he shared with us. Can you talk about intellectual property aspects with this software? If we wanted to use it in other countries, what kind of hurdles would we encounter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we have done is that the software in the English version is the one that has copyrighted to UC Davis, but the other software in different languages are not. So for example, the Vietnamese version is now available in Vietnam to anybody who wants it. As Dr. Pham showed, it is available on the website, and so anybody in Vietnam can use it. So for each countries within that region, anybody can use it in those regions.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And remember, please enter your question in the chat. Let us know which speaker you want to have address your question, or just speak up or indicate by raising your virtual hand. So I don't see another question yet, so I will move on to Padma. So Padma, can you please tell us about the basis of the app you described to us in terms of the nutrient requirements of the animals? Were those developed, were those determined based on animals, or measurements on tropical, subtropical animals, or were those using models developed on Western animals?
Thank you, Bola. See, the nutrient requirement has been worked out by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, and they update from time to time. So we based our equations on the tables developed by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. That is the source. Okay. It's mainly for tropical animals.
Thank you. And I understand from Carla that the invited experts have videos to present. Is that correct?
Hello, we are inviting the experts to put their video on if they so choose to, in order to participate in the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. It's not that they have presentations, but would like to see them. So if you don't mind, if the bandwidth permits, please put on your video. If it doesn't permit, then it's probably better to leave it off. So thank you, Carla, for clarifying that. Questions from the audience?
I think Emable has his hands up.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ermias. Thank you, Padma Kumar, for your presentation. I found the software very interesting. And of course, I had a couple of questions, but I will maybe ask only one question here. I found out that, of course, the tool can also assess the methane emission from the animals, especially. And I found out that, of course, the approach, the presentation was not easily visible, but I found that the approach used is from Shibata 1992. I think I'm wondering if this approach is still up to date, given the extensive development in methane emission estimates, the different models that had been developed, and also the IPCC methodology. So is that, have you ever tested the accuracy of the methane estimates, or you intend to update the approach in the software? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, raising that question. Actually, that is work in progress, because as you have seen, it's a very old reference where dry matter intake is taken as the indicator. The assumption is if the intake is more, there is a direct relationship between intake and quality. If the quality is more, the intake is more, and therefore the methane emission will be less. So that is the assumption Shibata et al. Used. But we are working with our environmental group. There is a, you might be knowing that there is a Mazingira unit which is looking at the methane emission studies. So we are working with them to update the equation. Probably we'll use some other indicator based on the latest developments. Thank you for that question.
Okay. All right, let me ask a question to Dr. Pham. Very interesting presentation about the rollout of the program in Vietnam. How did you get such high-level buy-in and participation? You had several agencies involved, DLD, NAEC, several of them. You had extension involved. It seems you had many people from the ministry involved. How did you get so many different groups to buy in and participate in the training?
Sorry, you can. I cannot hear you clearly before the,
okay,
the internet is so.
Let me repeat the question.
Yes.
You had many groups, many agencies of the government involved in the training.
Yeah.
How did you succeed in getting so many different groups to participate, from extension, from research, and so on? How did you convince the different groups? Did the minister give an order that everyone should participate, or how did that happen?
Okay. You know, in my presentation, you see Vietnam, the 6 ecologization region. So there are so much the kind of fish in Vietnam. Vietnam is a tropical country, so the nutrition.
Dr. Pham, can you speak a little louder, please? I'm finding it difficult to hear you. Please speak a little louder.
Yeah. Sorry, I cannot hear clearly because the internet is so. Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead with your answer. We can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think while he's doing that, maybe I can give you a brief view of what was happening as well. And so a lot of this was facilitated by the U.S. Embassy in Vietnam. So particularly the USDA FAS local office in Vietnam had a really good communication with the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, and the ministry also sort of delegated the National Agricultural Extension Center to be sort of the main hub to be able to train. And so the National Agricultural Extension Center has different offices around the country, and so they were able to work with different people around the country to put together this training. But I think what's happened after this project, people like Dr. Pham, who then took it upon himself to go ahead and train other people in Ho Chi Minh City and others. And so he works for the Department of Agriculture there in that province. So he was doing that by a lot of it on his own initiative as well. And then because the software was part of a curriculum for the main agricultural university in Vietnam, and that sort of helped the students that were being trained in this, and there were, as he showed, almost 6,000 students have taken the course to learn about this as well. So I think it's kind of worked through different organizations and facilitated by the U.S. Embassy in Hanoi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ermias, for clarifying that the USDA involvement at the outset really helped to galvanize support and buy-in from many different sectors, from extension, from research. And it's just amazing to hear that 6,000 students are now learning to use the software, as this has been integrated in the curriculum. Let's see if anyone has any question. Nuhun has a question about extension, getting extension involved, but maybe your question has been answered by Dr. Ermias. Is that, I see Nuhun nodding his head. Okay, so we'll move on.
Sorry, I think Adunya has had his, Professor Adunya had his hand up, and then the Diwakar also. So maybe Professor Adunya and then Diwakar.
So Prof. Adunya, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all presenters for this nice presentation. My first question is for Dr. Ermias and Dr. Pham. I mean, you said, Dr. Ermias, that it would be, the English version is the one that can be used in other countries, but I'm just curious if how one can access, if one can download it. The other one is, can you add data? I mean, additional feeds to the database and feed composition data to it. And to Padma, you said it is fits to the mixed farming situation. If it's because it's developed for that situation. What do you think if one tries to apply to semi-intensive systems or more of a commercial setting? Can it be easily adopted, or would it be difficult? Thank you very much.
Okay, I think I can start addressing your question, Professor Adunya. So in terms of the availability, the issue is that each country has its own specific feeds, and so it would be, even if you have access to Vietnam, the feed library is Vietnamese, so it really works in Vietnam, and so that's why it's quite specific, and also it tries to be more specific with the type of animals in that country as well. So that's why we try to scale it up and make it from different countries. So my long-term vision, my wish is that we have this software where you will be able to select a country, you'll be able to select animal type, and then you can do the ration formulation in the language that you want to do. So that this is the long-term vision, but then it needs to be really specific to that country and sometimes to the region within the country as well, because the feed availability is different within the region, and then leading to your second question, which is being able to add feeds. Yes, absolutely able to add feeds. It will give you an entry, and it's similar to Excel, where you can just put in, you can give it a name, and then you can put in all the NDF or whatever nutrition that it has, and that way you can really have your own data in there and be able to formulate it as well.
Thank you. I think there was a question for Padma. Padma, did you get the question?
Yeah, whether it can be used under semi-intensive system. The answer is yes. The basic principle used is the farmers will have some kind of basal diet, and then supplementing the diet to balance the nutrients. That is the idea. So already they have something. Now looking at the requirement, you can supplement and see which is the best bet option. It should be least cost, and also it should be locally available. That is the basic principle used. If that principle can be applied in the semi-intensive system, yes, it can be used, no issues. And this is actually individual animal based, because different animals will have different production levels. So for each animal, the diet can be formulated, and according to increase or decrease of milk yield, this can be adjusted. So it is not for a group of animals, but for each individual animal. That's why it's most appropriate in the smallholder context, where farmers will have 2 or 3 animals, out of which one will be milking. So that kind of situation, it is easy. But there is no problem in formulating diet in the semi-intensive system also. Even if you want to formulate a TMR for the animal, you can just put some concentrates, only 2 or 3 concentrates, and ask the tool to balance. Then it will come up with a roughage concentrate proportion, a 70-30 proportion, and make an advice what kind of feeds to be used based on local availability.
Thank you, Padma. We're going to move in a second to Diwakar Vyas. Dr. Vyas, please, your question.
Thank you very much, Bola, and thanks to all the speakers for a nice presentation. I have a couple of questions. The first is for Ermias. I'm really curious to know, Ermias, like you are comparing the NRC requirements with the nutrient requirements for the native breeds in Vietnam. How do you see the difference, and is it more on the maintenance requirement, and how do you see that changes the software?
Oh yes, so one of the main things is that the maintenance requirement and the efficiency with which energy is utilized for gain or for meat production is different. So compared to the Western breeds, we've seen it even in the West. We've seen it over the last 40-50 years. Those changes in maintenance requirement, in the utilization of energy for performance have changed as well as the animals kind of change. You know, we have bigger animals in the West, and so when they produce more, then the machinery, everything to help maintain all of this is increased as well. And so that's why we have to make sure that the maintenance requirements in those breeds, in indigenous breeds, or it could be crossbreds as well. We have to make sure that we have that balance. We have to take that into consideration. And there are some studies that we can use, and we did some meta-analysis to help us understand this. So obviously the best thing you can do is really have that requirement determined using the different ways. I mean, there's the slaughter technique, which is very expensive to do, but then we have other techniques now where we measure oxygen and carbon dioxide and methane, so that we can calculate sort of what's the heat production, and therefore what was the requirement, and then we can sort of using mathematical equations, we can predict what the minimum requirement is going to be, and what's the efficiency of utilization as well. So We are doing that in Ethiopia at the moment, and in Burkina Faso for goats and sheep. And so the preliminary data that I see, particularly from Burkina Faso, is very encouraging. And so that will give you really, the requirement for those type of animals in that kind of situation, and using the feeds that's available in that area as well. So I feel like, having to determine the requirements of those indigenous would be very, very important, because things are sort of changing quite rapidly, and hopefully you will see the new NRC coming out in August for the US, and so the maintenances have changed since the last time it was out in 15 years ago. So we need to be able to keep up with that, and that helps us, the software being much more relevant, and you get accurate estimates of feed use efficiency.
Thank you very much, Ernest. I have a question for Padma, and first of all, I think
Diwakar, can you speak up, please?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, thanks. So I have a follow-up question to Padma. And again, Padma, thank you very much for presentation. I've taken notes because we are working on an app in Sri Lanka, and I would like to include some of the components that you have mentioned. One of my question is that whenever we are making a least cost formulation, there is always constraints that we have to put in the app. The constraints that can be on the maximum minimum of energy, protein, the NDF component. So what kind of constraints this app is working on? Is it exactly 100% of the requirement, or you are giving flexibility of 90 to 110 or 120%?
Actually, we are looking at the actual requirement and what is available and the difference. So there is no flexibility given. The only thing is that there is a provision to increase or decrease the roughage inclusion. Because for high quality, high yielding animals, the nutrient requirement will be high. So you cannot have roughage more than 60%, for example. So in that case, there is a provision to reduce the roughage inclusion to 50%, so that 50% concentrates can take care of the requirement. Suppose it is just for maintenance, you can go up to 75–80%. With the roughages itself, the maintenance requirement will be met. So that is otherwise there is no minimum maximum. That is not probably that is required, but in this app it is not considered.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. And unfortunately, my screen is not showing the reactions of the people whose hands are raised. So
yeah. Thank
you, Lina, for posting those in the chat. Please continue posting if anybody is raising up their hand. Aimable and Muhun, you ask questions, but if you have an additional question, Aimable, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I do have an additional question for Ermias. I found it very interesting, of course, the development of those software, especially that can help extension services to better provide the advice. But I want to understand if there is any ambition of extending those software in maybe a very easy to use format to farmers themselves, because we know that it's very difficult for the extension services to reach all the farmers. And we know that, of course, the farmers, in order to adopt those tools, they need incentives. So is there any incentive, for example, that the government in Vietnam is providing to make sure that those new tools are used? Or is that only maybe in terms of destination, or the main users will be mainly only those in extension services, never the farmers? Over.
Okay, so in terms of the incentives, really the incentive is increased productivity. The farmers will see that they will be making more money. They'll be, they will use more efficiently with the resources that they have. So in a lot of places in Vietnam, for example, there's abundance of certain type of feed, but not others. So what tend to happen was to give this feed almost exclusively, like rice straw, for example, and the animals were really suffering, and there was no, they were not productive enough and lose calves and things like that. So with this kind of software, that actually helps them to realize that just adding a little bit of protein sources in particular, then they can actually maintain the animal's health, and they maintain their calves and be able to make a better living. So I think that's quite an incentive enough to do that, and that's what the extension, the main reason that the National Extension Center involved in that is that's their job, is to help to make sure that the farmers have the knowledge and the information that they'll be able to improve their livelihood. And at the same time, also it will reduce the emission load to the environment as well if you have a better productivity. I think the first part was to make it sort of easily available. So there are two things that we're doing. One is to do like a case study where Dr. Pham showed that there are 6 agroecological zones in Vietnam. And so we could sort of have a very specific ones in each of those agroecological zones and come up with a diet for formulation where you can just simply hand to farmers and give them as a guide. You know, this is sort of typical, looking at the what's happening typically in that area. You can formulate it, pre-formulate it, and then they don't need to use the software all the time. They can just come up with one, and that's what we've been asking for the extension agents as well. So they can come up with a case study for the region, for the season as well, because, you know, the feed availability changes within season. So they can come up with that, and then they can hand it over, and farmers will be able to use that. So instead of going to that, and the other thing is, as Padma Kumar has shown, you know, the mobile phones, the access to mobile phones is becoming, it's spreading quite well. I mean, in Vietnam, about 60% of people in the rural areas have a smartphone. And so that's a good way to get into that. And then it's in the local language as well. So we are in the process of developing an app as well. So based on what I showed you for Vietnam, we are in the process of developing a mobile app as well. So I think that will sort of help in the uptake and utilization of this software as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I think Nuhun has a question for Padma.
Yes, okay, thank you, Bola, and thank you to all the speakers. Padma, my question is about the apps. Do you have an idea about how many farmers are using the app now? And if you have the feedback about how friendly the app is used by the dairy farmers, and how do you get the farmers involved in using it? Because as you know, we work with Hermes now to develop also the apps for sheep and goat. And we are, during the visit of Bola here in Burkina, many farmers and also the extension people were very interested on using the balance ration software. So we want to know more about how do we get the farmers involved, and what is your experience on this? Thank you.
Yeah, see, this app was developed as part of a project in one province in India. And the earlier version, when we rolled out, we started training veterinarians in that particular province. So there were about 110 veterinarians. So we trained the veterinarians, and the veterinarians are supposed to provide training to the para-veterinary staff in their department, and then they are supposed to provide advice to the farmers. So if you take on an average, it's 100 into 120, maybe around 1,000 farmers are benefited in that particular province. Now we are going to scale it out to other provinces, because we are going to have collaboration with the provincial veterinary departments. And in each province, probably more than 1,000 veterinarians are there. So it is going to be a big outscaling, because through proper collaboration with the veterinary department, it can reach out to many people. And we are also planning to take it to Rwanda as part of the Rwanda Dairy Development Project.
Okay, thank you, Padma. I have a question for Dr. Alimego. You mentioned the Caliandra intervention, and the results were not as convincing as you expected. Can you please explain why again? I didn't quite get your explanation. And then secondly, have you used other strategies of reducing nitrogen emissions like tannins and bypass protein sources? So that is one question. And the second question is, how applicable or how ready do you think the technology of using smart amino acids is for developing countries? How accessible are those for dairy rations? Thank you.
Thank you. I think for the intervention related to the Caliandra, it was based mainly on research that has been conducted in Italy to increase the protein intake of animals, but also to balance the diet. However, of course, the key issue is that when, as I said, when you improve the protein intake at animal level and you reduce, you increase the efficiency at animal level, but you don't control other source of emissions across the chain, because in this case that I'm presenting here, the indicator is not really the nitrogen use efficiency at animal level. It's the nitrogen use efficiency along the chain, so which include also feed production and the processing of animal products. So therefore, on animal basis, we were able to achieve 10% increase in efficiency. And one issue was that, of course, when you don't increase the genetic of the animals, so you use they say the indigenous animals that are mostly present in Ethiopia, where actually we find out that in terms of productivity, you cannot increase really much. So what you can increase is the longevity. Of course, longevity may have other additional impact, especially when it comes to the environmental impact, but may be beneficial to the farmer because, as you know, the livestock is a multifunctional, let's say, in nature, especially for in Ethiopia, where those animals, they do serve also as a source of, or as an insurance capital for the farmers. So therefore, on animal basis, we could achieve a little bit, but due to the fact that the manure management was still not improved in the intervention, or the adoption rate, so how many farmers would be able to use that was also very low. So that was one of the reasons that the intervention of the Caliandra could only achieve 3% when you consider the entire chain level. So we did not test other aspects. Of course, this is something that is a study that we are doing in the global analysis, where we are targeting different countries, looking at the most effective solution. So there are some solutions that are quite difficult to implement in smallholder settings or in a pastoral environment. So therefore, we don't envisage mainly to do much more modeling about that. But I know that, of course, there is one aspect that we don't know, because most of the resources that farmers are using now already, they do contain, for example, tannin. But we don't know actually at what extent that tannin is influencing the diet, because those aspects are not usually considered in all those global modeling approaches. I think it's a part of uncertainty that we can improve if we do some specific studies at the country level or regional level. But usually for global assessments, it's quite difficult to take in account. It's the same for the bypass proteins. However, for the synthetic amino acid, I think is one of an interesting question. So I think it's possible to kind of implement or disseminate the accessibility to synthetic amino acids in developing countries. Because if you look at the poultry production, they have already achieved that. Because you go in any country now, you will see that most of farmers are accessing to premix, which contain already some synthetic amino acid and different growth factors that they do access, because poultry production, let's say, is much more organized. And of course, the genetics and are much more controlled. So farmers, they do have access to extension services or to the private extension services that is always provided by the companies providing the genetics. So that is not the case for ruminant, because ruminants are quite traditional, let's say, in many low-income countries, and there is no global, let's say, specialization on ruminant production so far. So we see that only we can see some progress that are happening in the dairy systems, but I would say less in any other production systems, especially for beef. So I think the potential is there. Then the issue would be about the cost. So the cost of that, and of course, the direct benefit when it comes to the productivity. I would say that for let's say, indigenous animals, it's difficult to improve productivity beyond a certain level due to other constraining factors, especially the environment, the quality of feed, the food resources already. So all of that are quite challenging. So that's why I think the accessibility is there, but maybe the cost benefit may still need further research to understand if that would be effective in the current setting.
Thank you very much, Dr. Imable. Our time is fast spent. I will ask one final question before turning it over to Dr. Ermias to end this session. And this question is to Dr. Fan. You had mentioned during your presentation, your recommendations, that there were some adjustments to the ration formulation program needed for tropical animals. Can you please explain what you meant?
I would like to explain this problem here. As you know, almost the tropical country, the farmer raise the dairy cow by the crossbreed between the local cattle with the semen import from the country. For example, USA, for example, for the Netherlands. So the nutrition, the requirement, the standard of requirement for the dairy applied in Vietnam, almost based on the NRC, for example. So, but there is the difference, the nutrient between the cattle, tropical cattle, and the Europe cattle. So we want to estimate or calculate the requirement practice in the tropical country. That's the reason I recommendation here.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's adapting it to meet the requirements of the specific subtropical animals that they have in Vietnam. So that would be also needed for other countries. And maybe Hermes can say a point on that during his closing remarks.
Yes.
So we're drawing this to a close. I want to especially thank each of the speakers for very enlightening presentations, for the expert panelists, for their questions, University of California, Davis, Dr. Ermias, Carla, for convening, organizing this event. It's a really interesting and important topic. I really think that we need maybe a global effort to roll out ration formulation in developing countries. It is really critical. We did this in Nepal. 94% of the farmers who worked with us used our ration formulation tool, reported improvement in their milk production. So this is critical, and it's critical for a number of reasons. One, to optimize the performance of the animals. Two, to reduce emissions, methane, greenhouse gases, nitrogen, and so on. Three, to improve animal health and make the best of genetic improvements in the animals. And then also to improve the efficiencies, to reduce costs and improve profitability. So very, very important topic, very, very important area. And we need to continue working as researchers, as extension people, and we need to bring policymakers in so that they can roll out this kind of program in other countries, just the way it was done in Vietnam. With that, I thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to Dr. Kibriel.
Thank you very much for facilitating, Bola. I think this was, as you said, was a very interesting dialogue, and I'd like to thank the USDA FAS for allowing us to be able to do this. I think without that support, we would not be able to have this kind of discussion. And so you might ask what the next steps are. Well, the next step is that the discussion will be summarized and will be submitted to the Food Systems Summit in the next 2 weeks. So one of the main reasons that we're doing this is to try to inform the UN Food Systems Summit that's happening in September. So we will have a number of these dialogues, but we'll have another 7 of those dialogues at different topics, and this will help inform the UN Food Systems Summit in recognizing what has been happening in relation to the US government, particularly USDA, and host countries, several different host countries working together and coming up with innovations, and those innovations actually being taken up and been used and been quite successful. So I very much appreciate all the panelists and all the participants for coming today and for engaging in this discussion. This is definitely one of my favorite topics. I thought it was 5 or 6 years ago, but then I saw Dr. Pham's slide, and so the first meeting we had was in 2013. So we've been doing it at least in Vietnam for the last 8 years, and I look forward for this to go around the world. As our facilitator said, I think this needs to be sort of rolled out globally. One of the reasons that we have very successful livestock production system in the US and in Europe is all of them are, we use ration formulation all the time. There's no cattle or any other animal that's been raised in the West that does not use a ration formulation, and that technology is changing on a yearly basis. As new information, new research comes in, this is changing as well. So I think we need to keep up with that, and this is one way to improve and to increase the productivity, and that will help the livelihood, and it will help in meeting our sustainable development goals, particularly SDG 1 and 2 will definitely be helped by rolling out this kind of technology and innovation. So in the next few days, we will be sending you a draft of this report for your review. We ask that you look at it and give us your edits within about a week of time, so that we'll have enough time to be able to put a final draft with your inputs into this discussion, and then we'll post it with the UN Food Systems Summit. And the recording of today's dialogue will be available in a few weeks' time on the UC Davis World Food Center website as well. So with that, I again thank you for your participation, and hopefully we'll see you in another dialogue.